Welcome back everyone to my Halloween extravaganza, the Dracula double feature, and somehow I've actually gotten this second part out on Halloween. I'm not entirely sure how I managed it.
In case you missed the last episode of the Dracula double feature, it's available in one of those handy card things in the corner. Anyway, today we're talking about a movie because I feel like it's been a while since we've done one of those, and it's not even an animated movie, oh no, this one is live action.
And it's actually the oldest piece of media that I've ever reviewed, so let's see what horror awaits in Dracula A.D. 1972.
Dracula A.D. 1972 was a Hammer horror production released, obviously, in 1972. The Count is back, with an eye for London's hot pants and a taste for everything. Well, doesn't that sound nice? It stars Sir Christopher Lee as the eponymous vampire and Peter Cushing as Van Helsing. This is actually the first time both actors had appeared together as the duo since the Dracula movie of 1958. And following the success of Count Yorga Vampire, it aimed to take a contemporary spin on the classic Dracula formula. And as a result, this is a Dracula movie overflowing with the 70s.
And honestly, this sounds like it could have been fantastic, but the critics weren't so enthused.
The film boasts a measly 25% on Rotten Tomatoes, and was met with lukewarm reviews at best, and at worst, was downright blasted.
And with all of that out of the way, how is it? Well, let's take a look.
1972 begins in 1872, with Dracula locked in battle with Lawrence Van Helsing. Not the original Van Helsing of the past, but another later one, I suppose. They're fighting on top of a big old carriage moving quickly through a forest, and through a freak accident involving a tree, the carriage crashes, impaling dear old Dracula on one of the wheels. As Dracula dies and disintegrates, Van Helsing succumbs to his wounds. So they both die. But who's this? A mysterious cloaked man appears and picks up the stake that killed Dracula, as well as Dracula's ring.
Ooh, how curious. I wonder if this has anything to do with a resurrection plotline 100 years later,
The mystery man buries the stake during Van Helsing's funeral as the funky intro rolls in. And I mean it, because this intro has the most 70s music you could possibly imagine. I would play it for you in full, but because of copyright I'm going to try and avoid it entirely. I'm not taking that risk. You'll just have to settle for listening to it quietly in the background.
Or alternatively, you can just watch a YouTube video that has the music. I'll put a little card up in the corner where you can listen to it if you want.
Also, Dick Bush. That's a great name. This intro sets up 1972 as being, well, not quite the Dracula movie you might expect. And this is only accentuated when we cut to a party, where a bunch of young people are dancing and having fun.
Gothic horror it ain't.
This older woman isn't having fun though. She's absolutely terrified.
It's okay to be afraid of legs. I mean, they're really long and weird. I totally get it.
Also at this party is someone who looks mysteriously like that guy from the past. Surely he's nice. I think what really amuses me about this scene is that there's an abundance of close-up shots of various people here, all in different states of approval. The older folks are concerned and dislike these parties, the young people are just there to have a good time.
Nothing much really ever changes, does it?
Although as it turns out, the younger people just turned up uninvited and are causing a bit of mayhem for these poor upper class people. Which is probably why they look so distraught. People being happy and having fun? What a terrible sight. Let me cry into my husband's arms. This little segment also introduces many of the characters in the movie. Of course, we've already seen the mysterious, totally not evil guy, but there's also this guy who dresses like a medieval monk.
Outrageous, outrageous, shocking, shocking!
He's also quite the comedian.
You know why I like you? Because you remind me of my father.
I'm not gonna say that you didn't deserve that, dude.
And there are numerous other characters, but because this scene is so busy and full of people, it's hard to pick out anyone specifically unless they have a speaking role. However, these people here form the main cast of the movie. After causing such a ruckus, the police are called in and the young people begin to scarper. Except this one girl here. She's just having too much of a good time to do anything really.
Some people just get caught up in the music. It happens. Consequences be damned.
Also before leaving, the evil mystery man threatens to knock a figurine off a table, much to the horror of this woman. It's such a bizarre little back and forth, and to be honest, it kinda just reminds you of rebellious cats pushing things off tables. It's way too drawn out here and far too dramatic for its own good. So that's our crew. An evil cat person and a bunch of party people. What could be better? In some ways this kind of feels like a proto-slasher movie because of the young, morally dubious cast of characters. I mean, you just know some of these characters will end up dead soon. So then they make their way to their usual haunt, the Cavern Cafe, and on the way they discuss the close call they just had with the police.
Listen, mate, are you taking me for a twit?
Considering you're dressed like a medieval monk in the middle of 70s London, I'd say that yes, I do take you for a twit.
While gathered at their table at the cafe, the evil dude, called Johnny, comes up with a genius plan to summon spirits at an abandoned church because hey, that just sounds like a grand old time. It's worth mentioning at this point that even though it's obvious, Johnny is definitely the descendant of the Dracula disciple we saw before. So this is bound to go amazingly well. Although to be honest, I'd be impressed if he managed to convince anyone to do something as dorky as summon evil.
Necromancy's for dweebs.
Who would ever agree to that? I mean, one of the group, Jessica, is rightfully concerned. Surely everyone will back her up in this.
Do you really think it'll work, Johnny?
No harm in trying.
Isn't there? Come on, Jess. It could be a giggle.
A giggle? Why do I even bother?
After agreeing to go through with the Black Mass, the group disperse from the cafe. Johnny, of course, is very excited about this whole thing and rushes around like a giddy child about his apartment, before picking up Dracula's ring and some kind of dust in a vial from his little shrine. I love that he has Dracula's picture framed on the wall. It's adorable. Meanwhile, Jessica is still hesitant about the idea, but her boyfriend Bob convinces her that it'll basically just be a bit of fun.
And it'll turn into a little singing, with maybe a little loving on the side.
Oh god, I hope not.
He also manages to convince her to get some information from her grandfather, who is apparently an expert on demonology. As it turns out, her grandfather is a Van Helsing, played by Peter Cushing, and as such, she is a Van Helsing too. They live together in a big house, and apparently she doesn't have any parents here. It's just Jessica and her grandfather, which reminds me of another Peter Cushing role actually. Anyway, this incarnation of Cushing's Van Helsing is called Lorimer Van Helsing.
Can't say that I've ever heard the name Lorimer before, but I gotta be honest, I kinda dig it.
He warns her about the dangers of the occult and basically says that these things aren't to be toyed with. Jessica doesn't buy it though.
You can buy that sort of stuff in almost any shady bookshop in Soho. I think it's all kinky.
I'm sorry, what?
Weird, man. Way out.
Oh right, 70s lingo, of course. I was worried there for a second.
Lorimer then offers to take Jessica out for a meal, but she swerves him, and he seems genuinely hurt. How could you hurt poor Peter Cushing? I mean, honestly, look at his little face.
I'd have dinner with Peter Cushing.
With all of that out of the way, our group of deviants head over to the abandoned church, where Jessica and Bob find the gravestone of Lawrence Van Helsing, the Van Helsing who died in the prologue. The duo just think of it as a sick joke from Johnny, and Bob ends up name-dropping Johnny's surname, which sounds kind of familiar.
Johnny Alucard. I'll push his bloody face in.
Oh, Johnny Alucard, huh? Well, that's very subtle.
Come on, Jess, let's get out of here.
Oh god, a spooky skeleton! I am spooked to my core.
Bloody idiot!
Oh thank god, it turns out it's just the meddling monk as usual, causing a bit of trouble.
I'm sorry, I just wanted to frighten you a little, and I did, didn't I? Go on, you can kick me on the head. I don't mind, kick me, I like it. But you got
Yeah, kick him in the head, he likes it!
Go on, kick his head in.
Yeah,
and
kick
let's
my
get
head.
on.
Yes, kick his head in! No, he's getting away!
Ah, damn.
Anyway, they enter the church and start to perform the ritual thing. They've got black robes and everything, and things start getting a little bit weird. And by weird I mean they roll their heads around to the sound of some drums on a tape, and Johnny loves it.
That's it, that's it. Now you've got it together, that's it.
As the ritual begins to hit its apex, Jess and Bob look increasingly more traumatized. But one girl, Laura, is totally into it and volunteers to do something. And, well, Johnny takes her up to the altar, mixes his blood with Dracula's ashes, I think, and just pours it all over her.
We all have that one friend who just takes things too far.
Obviously, with the ritual getting weirder and weirder, people begin to freak out and run away, and I don't blame them. Although sadly, for whatever reason, Laura can't seem to move and the others are too scared to help her. Well, Jessica tries to help her, but Bob drags her away.
Wow, you're a coward, Bob.
And this whole ritual leads to the grave of Dracula being disturbed until finally, nearly 40 minutes into the movie, the vampire himself appears. And I have to admit, the scene where he appears in smoke is completely badass.
It is textbook Dracula, and I love it.
Also, Christopher Lee immediately carries an intimidating presence into the scene. It's just fantastic. Dracula doesn't seem too enthused by his minion though, claiming that it was actually his will to be resurrected in the first place.
I summoned you!
It was my will.
This is probably how they got him to appear in the movie.
They were probably like, oh man, I can't believe we got Hammer horror legend Christopher Lee back for our new Dracula flick. But he was just like,
It was my will.
anyhow, poor Laura then gets killed by Drax, while the other members of the group are just freaked out about the whole affair in the first place. And when Laura doesn't turn up to the cafe, they really know something is wrong. Furthermore, some kids find Laura's body half buried in the church, and they seem kind of nonplussed about the whole thing.
They look more confused than anything else.
Like, I'm not asking to see traumatized children, but come on lads, put a bit more colour into it. This prompts the police to begin an investigation into the whole sordid affair, and they bring in Van Helsing to help since they believe it to be a cult killing. Lorimer recognises the signs though and worries that there might be a vampire on the loose.
That the killer was trying to obliterate the real cause of death. Vampirism. You're joking.
Through some stroke of luck, the police believe him somehow, but they also want to question Jessica about what happened the night before.
Say, Jessica, you didn't happen to resurrect a centuries-old vampire, did you?
She helps where she can, but goes to bed after learning of Laura's death. Understandable, really. Meanwhile, Johnny seduces another member of the group, Gaynor, by bringing her to his apartment, and then to Dracula. Of course, Dracula ends up having another drink, and Johnny dumps the body in the river. Jessica actually witnesses all of this through her dreams, because, I don't know, Van Helsing bloodline or something. And she gets pretty spooked about the whole thing.
I really do want to question the methods of murder that Johnny and Dracula have, though.
Honestly, for such big villains, they're pretty terrible at hiding bodies. I mean, Gaynor's body gets found right away, and Laura was just half buried lazily.
It's like you guys want to get staked, just no effort. No effort at all.
In addition, Van Helsing works out the meaning of Alucard. And I mean, did he really need to write it down to work it out? I honestly thought it was pretty obvious. As a reward for his service to Dracula, Johnny gets turned into a vampire himself, and kills another woman who just wanted to do a laundry. Rest in peace, laundry woman. Gone but never forgotten. At this point, Dracula just wants to eliminate the whole Van Helsing bloodline, so he gets Johnny to go after Jessica. In order to do this, Johnny turns Bob into a vampire too, and Bob lures Jessica into a closed down cavern cafe, where she then gets captured.
Honestly, dying, becoming a vampire and moving the plot forward is the most useful thing that Bob's done all movie.
Once Van Helsing realises that Jessica is missing, he goes for a little run around London, until he gets stopped by Anna, another member of the group who hasn't really done anything in this movie except just exist. So she finally gets given something to do, although she kind of just turns up and tells him where Johnny lives.
Yes, I know where he lives.
Will you give me his address?
And then we don't see her again.
Oh, okay then.
Van Helsing goes to Johnny's apartment to confront him, and they have an epic battle where Van Helsing gets slashed by a knife slightly, and then Van Helsing shines a mirror on Johnny's face, which causes him to stumble up the stairs, into the bathroom, into the bathtub, and then he turns on the shower and dies because running water is harmful to vampires.
Miss Jessica, you'll never find her! You can rot in hell!
That is just an unfortunate way to go, really.
He just gets caught in a terrible Rube Goldberg of death. It's almost comical. In fact, no, it's definitely comical. I laughed when I saw this. It's just silly. Anyhow, with Johnny out of the way, Van Helsing rushes to the abandoned church to take on the big man himself, who has only made like 2 or 3 appearances in the whole movie. Honestly, it kind of feels like this film is just Dracula by name alone. He's barely in it, which is a shame.
I guess, at this point, having Christopher Lee put on a cloak and look menacing for a few scenes was enough to call it a Dracula movie.
So yeah, much like in the intro, Dracula and Van Helsing fight once again, but it's a fairly lame fight this time. They go up a tower, Dracula gets stabbed and pushed off, but then he's okay again because Jessica is under his thrall and pulls the knife out. Then Dracula is led outside and has holy water thrown at his face and he falls onto a bed of wooden stakes.
Considering it's Dracula, that's a bit of a lame way to go. I mean, Johnny's death scene had a bit more theatrics to it.
Where is she? You'll never find her!
Although I gotta admit, the effect of him dying here is pretty awesome. It's delightfully gruesome. And then, as Lorimer Van Helsing embraces his granddaughter, the film says, "Rest in final peace." Because this was actually the final appearance of Christopher Lee as Dracula.
Nah, I'm only joking. Of course there was another one. There's always more Dracula.
All in all, Dracula A.D. 1972 isn't a good movie, but it is a lot of fun to watch. It's just incredibly cheesy overall with lots of silly moments. It is really a shame that Dracula isn't in it more though, because he steals every scene that he's a part of. In some ways it kind of feels like the movie was just piggybacking on Christopher Lee. I mean, all he really does is turn up, look menacing, say a few things, get into a fight and die. And those are some of the most memorable sequences. Most of the actual villainy in the movie is carried out by Johnny Alucard instead, who gets an absurd death despite his build-up and longer screen time. I know I'm making it sound like there's not a lot of good things in this movie, but there are a few things I do really like. Peter Cushing as Van Helsing is wonderful as always, and Stephanie Beecham puts in a pretty great performance as Jessica Van Helsing as well. Not to mention Christopher Neame as Johnny Alucard is delightfully creepy and puts in the perfect amount of ridiculous. Still though, my favourite thing is the ceramic figurine at the beginning. You can't beat it.
It gets me every time.
But yeah, that's Dracula A.D. 1972. If you get the chance to watch it, it's worth it for a little bit of fun. Or in the words of Laura,
It could be a giggle.
And really, a bit of a giggle is a perfect way to describe this movie.
Come on, love, it's only a giggle.
So that was the second and final part of my Dracula double feature, the Halloween special for this year, and I hope you guys enjoyed the double offering of the iconic blood-sucking fiend. Happy Halloween everybody, and good night.